We're going to move back to Hamish for this, who will be talking about CPD, or continuous professional development, and how you might tackle that within CiviCRM.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this as an area that it's really fun to have built something into Civi to handle. So what is CPD? It stands for, continuous professional development, and it's the practice across lots of industries. It's particularly prevalent in the UK of essentially continuously upskilling to keep you up to date in your field. So it means that, in lots of industries where you might have some sort of professional qualification or body, there becomes with it a need to keep up a certain amount of training, of hours, in order to keep yourself accredited and keep yourself up to date with the latest sort of techniques or industry standards. And the sort of two ways that this is usually done is to either sort of track points or track just sheer number of hours spent doing learning. And as we see, this can be tracked in a few different ways. So in the UK, I think most people will be familiar with some industry or some body that has a CPD element, from keeping chartered accounting qualifications to medical experts to even people in things like the sort of the agriculture and veterinary industry. There's almost nowhere you can go where there isn't an accreditation and a need to do CPD to keep yourself up to date in a continuous way. And all of that comes from working with a professional body who needs to then administer this CPD and keep track of how many hours, how many points people are gathering, and keep them therefore accredited and up to date. So how do we here's an example, a sort of fictional example. We have a few data analysts here in Compuco, and I'm sure that they would love to be accredited as data masters. And so in our example, any data master must acquire 200 points per year to keep their accreditation, which can come in a variety of different ways by attending different training seminars. And every time you do, each session will be worth a certain number of points. And that will hopefully over a year total you to 200 and will fill your CPD requirement. So there's the challenge of how we record this in Civi and how we manage it. There's a few different ways, there's a few different things to consider. Adding those CPD sort of records of each piece of learning that you've done, finding a way to connect them through to events and to assign the CPD as a quality of an event element, adding the actual number of points and hours to your sort of attendance record and to have that connect to your contact. And finally, to find a way to get this information back if you've got your contacts with different activities logged against their name of CPD that they've done, how to see that and actually use that to track who is doing, who's reaching their targets and who is keeping up to date. So the way we've approached this in Compuco is, first of all, creating a new activity type. So we've added this as something that will appear on this contact record. It's a custom type of activity just for tracking CPD. And on where it's installed on Civi, you'll see that on this contact tab on the bottom left there, with a view of each individual sort of activity record of completing, say, a training, a webinar, or similar. Next up, we've added a set of fields to the Civi event space. So whenever you create an event, you're setting the details of that event, its name, title, location, and so on. And now you can also, in this area, set the CPD settings for an event to determine, is this event relevant to CPD? And if so, how is that going to work? So if we go to the next slide, we can see those settings in a bit more detail. So on any given event, we can turn CPD on. We can say that attending is going to be worth a set number of credits or hours. And in a detail that we'll come on to later, we can also categorize the CPD into one of the categories. But most specifically, we can determine who it applies to. So which type of event attendee, be they regular attendees, speakers, and so on, and also what status they need to be in to actually be awarded those points and for it to count against their name. Obviously, in any event, you want the trainers or the observers attending. You want to be able to specify exactly who gets that CPD sort of attributed to them. So as I mentioned earlier, the other thing we've done is categorize the CPD activities, and that's a sort of a field, a quality of each record. And that means that you can distinguish and sort of break down a little bit between different types of activity, different qualifications or different use cases might have needs to specify whether you're doing formal learning at home, self-directed. And so we've created options to let you create and manage those different categories. And then lastly, how do you then track those activities and see who's doing what? In this case, we've lent on SearchKit as a way of creating sort of easy reports of any kind of record in the system. And so here's a really simple overview of how in sort of standard Civi you could create a report showing people which activities they've completed and the hours that or points that they've sort of earned with that. However, if we come on to the next slide, there is a Compuco sort of bonus feature that we'd like to show that filters into another big feature that we're really proud of, which is our self-service portal. So the portal is a way of letting people log into a front-facing site, see details that are about their own user, and we've made CPD a part of that so that users can see a dashboard, track their hours, submit records, and generally see lots of information about their progress, but also feed that information back into the system and record CPD that they've been a part of. And so for the last couple of minutes, I can show a really quick video demo of what that looks like. So here's a user, and Aaron Poirot, logged into the portal, and he can see the total number of hours that he is shooting for this year, and can see a sort of a graph breakdown of it, as well as a breakdown of different categories of CPD that he's involved with, and within each one, the records of the different bits of learning that he's done. And from here, he can also add a new record, so he can submit the fact that he's done additional training and add a CPD record for that. The date and graph view is filterable, so he can change settings on that and see basically any relevant view for his activity over that time, and even export it to CSV and end up with a CSV breakdown list of each individual CPD activity, be it from events he's attended or ones he's submitted to the portal. One of the other areas that we are really so pleased to have integrated into the portal is the idea that CPD could form part of an applications process. So we have other areas of the portal built to handle applying for things like grants and awards. And so the integration that we've also built is to make CPD a part of that sort of review process. So in our scenario here, our person wants to apply for a grant, and the amount of CPD that he's completed is now something that can form part of that review process. And the people reviewing and approving that grant will see the amount, the CPD sessions that he's attended and the learning he's completed, and use that to sort of help evaluate and judge. And so here, now that he's submitted the application, the CPD area has been locked because we've configured that. And then when we come to reviewing it, so the reviewers can log into the same portal and see applications and work on them, that reviewer can now see Mr. Poirot's CPD details and use that to help guide their review process. So they get a view of a sort of select part of what your application is, but also your CPD. And from here, they might decide to award the grant or not to. So hopefully that shows you not just what it's like to use the Compuco portal and see and work with CPD there, but also the way that particularly Compuco, we're always trying to connect these features and make the workflow as smooth as possible and give as much of power to the user to really connect with these processes.